There's a corner in our backyard lawn that the grass had died. It was just dirt. And I, as a little kid, thought, perfect spot for me to plant some watermelon seeds. I love watermelon. If I plant seeds, then I'll have watermelon forever. So I grab a spoon and I start to scratch and dig, but the ground in that corner was really dry. I barely got past the surface. Good enough for me. I throw the seeds in and scoop the dirt over it, and a couple days go by and nothing happened. In fact, another week goes by, nothing. Because I was a kid, I didn't understand how these things work. I didn't think it through. I didn't realize that a seed needs like a real investment to have rich soil, the right water, a controlled heat environment, all the things. And consequently, there was no growth. Growth for me is how I like to think of finances. The material goods that we have been entrusted with, we have to think things through, we have to plan ahead to provide the right kind of environment for grace to work in. Here's the crazy thing. Jesus, our God, second person of the Trinity, became man. He used concrete, material, timely, or worldly substance, known as human nature, to bring about his presence into our humanity, into our existence. He gave us to use bread and wine, material things, not a lot of value to them. And he could provide his presence in any way he wants, but he has chosen to use the things of this world, and in this case for the Eucharist, bread and wine, which he transforms substantially at the deepest level of its being into his body and blood, soul and divinity. I bring this up, one, because for this last month, me and the other priests assigned here have been trying to preach about 3 words, all about what sometimes is called stewardship, how we use our time, talent, treasure, whatever people want to call it. But the 3 words we've decided to use are live, grow, and act. Because we all must live our faith, we must try to grow this community, and we must act on what we believe. So believe it or not, I'd like to focus on growth today. Partly is because of this gospel today. It's a very strange one that has confused me a lot. It's a tricky image, strange. One, it took me some study to kind of figure out what exactly is happening and then what it means. So in the gospel, we hear about a steward, a gentleman who worked for a rich man, and his job was to manage finances, to manage some of the debts. Who knows, this rich man apparently had huge influence, because when this steward is caught for cheating and fudging numbers, and is told he's got a couple days to clean up his stuff and get out, he gathers the people who owe his boss, who have debts. The debts are of an extreme amount. Here this translation just says 100 measures of olive oil. Well, in the context, this is like mass production level of olive oil. So if you think of a corporation that exists producing olive oil, like, I don't know, Kirkland is the one that Kirkland makes everything. So this guy is like Kirkland, Mr. Kirkland, and he's mass producing olive oil, and this guy has a debt of 100 measures of it. It's an insane debt. Or when it says that another owed 100 cores of wheat. Cores, it's a measure of space like acres. So this person owed acres and acres and acres worth of wheat production. Like, it'd be really difficult to actually quantify how great that debt was. So this dishonest steward when he's told that he's getting fired, calls in these people that have these huge debts. And he's like, basically, here's what is happening. This dishonest steward says, I'll hook you up. You owe that much, we're gonna cut that in half. I got you. Just fudge the numbers. And he does this, so he's thinking through that he doesn't want to work, he's about to get fired, and he has nothing left once he loses this job. So he thinks through and he plans ahead, and he said, if I win these people over, then I have a community to fall back on. I got some people who are going to help me out because I helped them out. That's what's happening. And in this story, Jesus commends this person. He says, this guy was clever about worldly things, about materialistic things. He thought it through, he planned ahead, and he invested deeply so that he had a community to fall back on. And Jesus says, the children of light need to be more clever like that. People of the world think things through for a worldly purpose. How much more you and I, people of faith, should be thinking carefully and planning ahead for the sake of having a community where we have support in the sacraments, in the needs of our faith, that we have a community of faith to fall back on. For example, the classic is the basket gets passed around at church. And it's usually like, oh, let me see if I have loose change in my pocket. Or it's seen as like the tip basket for the homily. Oh, I like the homily, we'll give a little cash for him. Nice job, Father. Or it's, I like what they're doing, and like, I approve, so I approve with my money. As if, I don't know, we get a little carried away sometimes. Why is Jesus making a big deal about money? Because it's good for our souls to be intentional about our material things. Because we believe that God uses material good for spiritual purpose. This church, brick and plaster, actually houses the divine presence. Sure, God could be present. We could have the tabernacle in any old space. But the church, the physical building, helps facilitate the encounter with the living God, not just in the amount of space, but in its beauty. It helps open hearts. I've been thinking a lot about the fact that this parish was established in 1954 at a time when the population of Phoenix was 322,000, which is less than 7% of what it is today. And already in 1954, they started the school because people provided material goods to build a space where 5 Irish sisters taught over 200 children, averaging about 60 students per sister, without a teacher's aid, without any other help. Just one sister versus 60 kids. And those sisters dominated. The school has only grown. And because of many people, which I really have been pondering this because it's so deeply encouraging to consider, that many people have provided for this parish, such that without fail, every single year, hundreds of kids have been formed and educated through our school. Our school is our biggest ministry, but we also have things like our faith formation program, which this year we have over 200 kids in the faith formation receiving catechesis in the faith. And that happens because, one, lots of people have invested of their time and are giving of their talents to teach the kids, to catechize, which many of you are probably called and you haven't considered it. We need catechists. But it's also happening because we have some financial resources to provide the concrete material needs so that happens. And it's crazy to think that at one point we even had 1,000 kids going through our catechesis program because of concrete investment, thinking things through, planning ahead, and because many have invested in this community to make sure that God has something to work with for this local church. This parish has a boundary. We're trying to serve the people of this neighborhood, the people who belong to this community. But we want to think through and plan ahead, because we just celebrated about 68 years of this parish's existence, and I think we ought to be thinking things through and planning ahead so that this place can continue to grow and do the good work for another 68 years. All that to say that this imagery of the gospel of this guy who's a bad administrator, and he hooks people up, planning ahead so that he has a community to fall back on. This is actually a little bit of an image of what Jesus does for you and I. Because you and I have extreme debts, huge debt, because none of us earned the right to exist. None of us did anything to deserve life. It's a pure, utter gift. Not to mention any talents, any abilities, any bit of health. Anything good and everything good is an utter gift, because God has thought things through and provided these circumstances for you. We owe God so much, and we have squandered the gift. We have been bad stewards by every time we sin, by every time we put ourselves above God or others, and even just in our own silliness, our own weakness. We squander the extreme gift, so we have huge debts. But Jesus didn't just rewrite our debts, fudge the numbers for us. Jesus literally died to pay off our debt. Thanks, Jesus. Now I can be lazy and lame. No. It's all a gift that we've been given. So first we need to be grateful, but then take that responsibility seriously. How often do we just think and plan ahead for how we're going to save money here and there? We look for sales. We think and plan carefully for our next purchases, our next trip to the mall. I often think about the next musical CD I want. I still buy CDs. Or I think about a concert that I might go to. How often do we stop and think about how I can be generous with my finances? How I can set aside some money to provide for this parish? Imagine what it would be like to actually think very carefully about my material goods and always be thinking ahead. How can I invest deeply to provide for growth? The growth in individual lives, the growth of this community. What's beautiful about that is it's good for us. The point of, Jesus uses the term dishonest wealth. He says, make friends for yourself with dishonest wealth. That's a euphemism. This was a common euphemism in the time of Christ for almsgiving. Almsgiving is where you give money to the poor, to the church, the temple. So it's giving cash and not getting anything in return for it. So in this euphemism, dishonest wealth, he's talking about being smart with how we give alms. And it's not, again, as a tip or a sign of control to influence the church. It's good for the soul to help us exercise detachment so that we're not ruled in anxiety or in hope for material comfort or security. We have to be prudent. Yes, we have families, especially if you have a lot of kids, you are de facto poor and you don't have a lot of wealth. But the little bit of wealth that each of us has, we have to be smart. And it's a beautiful thing to pray about that today. Next, 2 weeks from now, October 1st and October 2nd, we're going to have what is called an open house, where we're going to feature a bunch of our ministries here in the parking lot and courtyard. We're going to try to fill up the space to celebrate, because we're very proud of all the ministry we offer to this neighborhood and to this community. I think I've been surprised many times by discovering just how much is done here. We have about 50 ministries here. They're not all going to fit out here. They're not all going to be represented. But we want to do this open house event October 1st and 2nd to help celebrate and acknowledge what we do, but also to invite everyone to ponder and consider where God is inviting you to get involved, so you can be aware, but also so that you know what happens with your financial gifts and the potential growth that we can provide for. So we bring all of that with great joy and gratitude to the Lord in this Eucharist, asking Him to help us grow in humility and gratitude.